Okay, if you can join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I suppose I should call the meeting to order. So, are there any comments from the audience? Do we have an audience? I don't think so. Are there any corrections to the agenda or the consent calendar? Okay. Have a motion? Okay, I'll move to adopt the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. President Sheehan,
Yes.
Director Cefalu,
Yes.
Director Ramzos,
Yes.
Director Peterson,
Yes.
Director Exline.
Yes.
That motion is unanimous.
Okay. And now we go to item 6A, generator brand standardization. And this looks like it's Clint Bartlett and Brent Koklowski.
Good afternoon.
Hey, sorry to jump in real quick. I can't see anybody. Can you guys see me, or is it just my voice? Sorry to interrupt.
We can't even hear you.
No.
Yeah,
Can you hear me now?
No.
All right, I might call in, so I'll be listening, but I'm gonna call in using my phone.
yeah, it's real crackly, Nick, and we aren't able to see you.
Sounds like you're a spy calling in.
Yeah. Undercover.
There it is.
Where's you?
Now we can see you.
Yep.
All right. Good deal. All right, Cliff, go right ahead.
Okay. What we'd like to do here is standardize 2 branch generator for the district. We have in the past done this for 1 brand. We're getting larger generators now, and the 1 brand that we have been using, the MTU, which has been a fine generator for most of our sewer stations and our new well sites and booster stations and so forth. They just get a little, they have odd voltages when they get up into the higher voltage. And so we'd like to find Caterpillar as the next standardization for anything over 500 kilowatt. And the MTUs will be anything under the 500 kilowatt range. Now, couple advantages with both of these generators. My crew and I, we both been trained in them. We know that these generators very well. Interchanging the parts and whatnot for generators is easy to keep on hand for the usable parts and things that go wrong. We'd like to do this for, I believe, Brett and I talked for about 6 years, standardize these 2 generators. That's kind of where I like to stand on that, just in case things go different and different techniques and new processes come out to be able to generate power. So if you have any questions or anything on this, I'll be glad to answer them as best as I can for you.
Any questions or comments for Cliff?
Cliff,
Not for me.
Cliff, I had a question. This is a sole brand, but there's multiple vendors as suppliers, right? So there's still some competitive bidding element.
No. Both
Yeah,
these vendors
territories?
have a certain territory.
Okay.
Caterpillar is more central, Northern California. We've been buying most of our product for the generators from Holt of California, which they're a very good, reputable cat dealer. I do a lot of business with Cashman out of Reno for a lot of maintenance work and all my parts that I get for our tractors and so forth. MTU, they're based out of Idaho. Their local district is Nevada also, and we're part of their district. But you are correct, there's many vendors out there, you know, Holt, Caterpillar's globally known as well as MTU. But these two dealers we've dealt with in the past for many years and been very responsible with taking care of problems and getting us the correct product.
Yeah, my concern is that we get a fair price when we do these sole branding.
Yes, I understand that part. The MTU beforehand was Catolite, and we've always got fair pricing from them in the past. They always came in under low bid, and same with MTU. MTU is a subsidiary of Rolls-Royce. Very good product, very reliable and very well built engines they have. The generators are pretty much generic from each manufacturer. There's only a few manufacturers that build the generator part for these. So, and plus being able to, with all our employees that we have, and be able to go to station and be familiar with the same product has made life much more easy on our employees. Years ago, when you go from one station to another and you got half a dozen or better different generators that all run in different and controls, it was a headache. So I've been trying to keep everything kind of standardized with this.
Hey, Cliff.
Yeah.
Just real quick, I just received a text message actually from Heidi, and just wanted to remind you that the Caterpillar has once been competitively bid through the Sourcewell contract.
Yes.
Yeah.
And MTU is the same way.
Okay.
I apologize. I forgot about that. I've been working on something else for our next board meeting. But yes, they are Sourcewell bid, which I believe is a 35% discount on the Caterpillar itself right off the top. And then any options, other pieces that we add to it comes with another discount that's already been negotiated for the government bid process.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that clarification.
No problems.
Any other questions or comments? We have a motion.
I'll move approval of the staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, was that Director Exline that seconded that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, we have a motion and a second. President Sheehan,
Yes.
Director Cefalu,
Yes.
Director Ramzos,
Yes.
Director Peterson,
Yes,
Director Exline.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimous.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cliff. And that brings us to 6B, aeration blower system emergency power and secondary clarifiers number 1 and 2 project, which is Brent again and Steve Caswell. Either Brent or Steve there?
Sorry, I am here. I thought Brent was doing this, so I apologize. He should be out there.
I know he was sick though, so he might not have made it.
Well, we were just on a phone call before this, so.
Oh, okay.
If he's not gonna chime in.
You guys hear me now?
There we go.
Okay. Always fun with these technologies. Okay, so today we've got kind of a follow-up on Cliff's item, or it'll make sense, the timing of Cliff's item anyway. So at the last board meeting, the board approved to advertise for bids for the aeration blower system emergency power and secondary clarifiers number 1 and 2 project. And so that project includes installing a 700 kilowatt diesel engine generator to power the blower system, as well as rehabilitation of secondary clarifiers 1 and 2. And it also includes battery backup systems at some of our water tank sites. So one of the things that we need to do to meet the requirements of public contracting code is to list in the bid documents any of these sole brand purchasing items that we're going to require the contractor to use a specific brand. And that list must be approved in advance of bidding by the board of directors before we can put that in our specs. So there's a list of findings that we can choose from in the purchasing policy that allow us to do these sold brands and list these sold products. And so for this project, we have 2 products that fall into this. One is the Caterpillar generator. And so that is utilizing the standardization that just got approved. And so for this size of generator, we've been going with Caterpillar on our other ones, and so we want to stick with that. And so the findings for that one are that it's compatible with other generators that we have, other materials and equipment the district currently has, that it's been standardized and is only available from one source, and that is Holt of California, has our area. We did get a letter from them saying that we are in their territory and they're the only ones that can supply to us for this purchase. And also finding for that competitive proposals wouldn't be useful or produce any kind of advantage. As Cliff mentioned and Paul mentioned, we have the Sourcewell, we're a Sourcewell member, and so we benefit from that. And so that's going to save us quite a bit of money. And that Sourcewell contract includes a competitive bidding process where basically Sourcewell does that. Every few years, they solicit proposals and review those and selected Caterpillar to have a contract with. So we get to benefit from that. The second named sold brand that we need to list is Ovivo USA for the secondary clarifier mechanisms. And as you'll recall, we're currently under construction contract for the rehabilitation of clarifier number 3. And so that's just getting started now. We're getting the submittals reviewed, including for those mechanisms. And so when we rehabilitate numbers 1 and 2 under this contract, we want to make sure that we match what's going in this summer. And so that was competitively bid this summer. We have that pricing to compare to, and so we'll be able to make sure we're getting a fair price on that through comparison to the competitive bid that we just did. So then the second 2 pieces of this agenda item are specific to the generator itself, and that is 1, to waive the bidding procedures so that we can use this sold brand. And what we want to do is negotiate directly with Holt, and instead of doing a competitive bid and just negotiate a price. And so our consultant has put together a set of bid documents And so we have those prepared. And really what it comes down to is scheduling constraints. We need to get we have grant funding for the generator, and we need to get it constructed this summer. And so with the long lead time on the generator and our bid schedule for the entire construction project, we thought it was worth our effort to do a pre-purchase of this generator ahead of time. And so basically negotiate that over the next month, come back to you guys for approval of that contract once we have the price, and then we can start working on submittals and get that generator on its way. And then we're going to do something a little unique this go around, and our plan is to then assign that purchasing contract to the construction contractor, and that way they'll be responsible for coordinating delivery and warranty and all of that that coordination with the factory during installation. So, any questions?
I have one, Brent.
Go for it.
And forgive me for asking this because I probably should know the answer, but these are standby generators for those facilities? Is that correct?
Correct. And
okay.
so,
well, so it leads me to my next point, which is, since we just built a brand new standby generator building, would that not power those facilities? And do we have to have separate generators for that, even though we just built that new building?
So really, it's the way things are configured. The new generator has the capacity to power that, but the way that we have it configured, and the way we always have, is that it doesn't automatically start. Whereas this new smaller generator is configured to only power the aeration system, which is the blowers that blow the air into the aeration basins that keep the bugs growing and doing the job. And so it needs to start basically as soon as we lose power. And so this one will be set up to do that. What we currently have right now is an engine-driven blower. And so we basically have one blower that sits in standby all the time, and then that diesel engine kicks on and powers just that single blower. Whereas this, we had some issues with that in 2017, where something broke on that, and we ended up having to bring a portable generator in to run the blowers anyway during those storms and power outages. And so this new configuration will allow us to power any of our existing blowers, as well as any future more high efficient blowers that we're looking at. And it's really that auto start capability rather than trying to fire up the large 2 megawatt generator that powers the entire plant.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for Brent?
So what would it cost to have the existing generator configured to respond in the way you need it to respond to for the clarifiers, the blowers?
I don't know that we've looked up that cost. Steve might recall if we have. He was in on the big generator, but really what it comes down to is just that reliability of having. I think it could be configured that way. It's just we also lose that redundancy that we have right now. If we can get this new generator installed, and there's an issue with that, then we have the redundancy having the large generator. If something were to happen with the large generator and we didn't have this generator, we'd have no redundancy, and those bugs would start dying pretty quickly if we lost power and the large generator was out of service for any reason. So it's really that critical process.
As a reminder as well, we have received a roughly $700,000 grant from FEMA to pay for this generator.
That makes a difference.
Thanks for that reminder, Julie.
Yeah,
Julie's always taking to me when it comes to money.
I could also provide a little bit of the history of why we have the generators configured the way we do. Historically, we've had a lot of power bumps at the treatment plant, and having that large generator kick on and then kick off and then kick back, caused some concern with the old generator that we had. And so that's why we have a small generator that powers critical loads, but it's not big enough to power this aeration system. And so that was where the diesel blower always came in. And so now we will have a generator to power that instead of the diesel blower. But it's more of the not wanting to have that large generator kick on and off unnecessarily. So that is sort of why we had configured things that way.
Thank you.
Sounds like we've got some background noise playing in. If we wouldn't mind just muting our microphones unless we're speaking, that might help. That should help. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, do we have a motion?
He went and stirred shit up there.
I'll move approval of the staff recommendation.
I'll second that.
Oh my God.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. President Sheehan?
Yes.
Director Sepulou?
Yes.
Director Ramzos?
Yes.
Director Peterson?
Yes.
Director Exline?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to payment of claims, and I will move approval of payment of claims in the amount of $1,280,373.12.
I'll second that
motion.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. President Sheehan?
Yes.
Director Sepulou?
Yes.
Director Ramzos?
Yes.
Director Peterson?
Yes.
Director Exline?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimous.
Okay, so do we have any standing or ad hoc committee reports?
I guess I can report out on, I attended the Alpine Biomass Committee meeting on Tuesday evening, and there was a presentation from Dr. Scott Stevens on kind of statewide forest management activities going on, and I think that particular committee was very interested in that because they're engaged in forest restoration. Mostly it was an opportunity for me to introduce myself as the STPUD liaison, and I'm looking forward to working with that group. So,
Thank you, Shane. Thanks for doing that for us, representing us. Anyone else? Okay, so how about board member reports? Does anyone have a report? I personally have nothing.
I guess my question is, do I report at the standing and ad hoc, or do I report at the board member reports related to
I
liaison activities?
think you'd be just fine.
Okay, good.
Yeah, liaison typically would be under standing and ad hoc committee. So you were right on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody?
I do just have, let everybody know, I will be attending the Aqua Washington DC conference virtually on February 24th.
That's great, thank you. And then I guess that brings us to El Dorado Water Agency.
I did have a conversation earlier today, about an hour conversation with the General Manager Ken Payne, and he just basically briefed me on history of the agency, the powers and the authorities and the ongoing activities of the agency to kind of bring me up to speed. We do have a meeting next week that'll be also virtual.
All right, thank you. I think you're up, John, General Manager report.
Okay, thank you. I'll start off with a staffing update. We interviewed 5 for 2 available DVR recycled water worker positions. We selected 2 really excellent candidates who have accepted, and so they're now in the pre-employment process. And for accounting supervisor, we interviewed 6 last week, all again really impressive candidates. We made an offer, it was accepted, so again there we're in the pre-employment process. And for HR analyst, getting ready to set up interviews for later this month. And we are still reviewing applications for underground repair water. We're expecting interviews at the end of the month or perhaps early next month. COVID-19. No COVID sickness at the district. We do have 3 employees out sick, and perhaps it's just a cold that's been going around, but not sure. So they're out and working at home in some instances, and they are getting tested or awaiting test results for COVID. And you know, I'm just thinking of a normal year. We don't have the exact numbers, but we were talking about this morning. We probably have, if you look back in previous years, we probably had more people out sick historically than we do right now. You know, so 3 seems like a very small number for any given year. So we're glad that that's the case, certainly this year. We're still at risk level 3, and so that means higher levels of remote work, mostly virtual meetings. We continue those 12-hour staggered shifts for the field crews, and the front office remains closed. So just looking ahead, and when do we change our risk level? We continue to monitor CTC state and local data, especially the local data, county data, and information from Barton. Shelley forwarded that information to the board yesterday or earlier today, I believe. And of course, we look at our own staff health to determine when we can drop back to that next risk level. We have a risk level 2.5 ready for that situation, and hopefully we're looking at that near the end of the month or hopefully next month. We'll see. But it's looking better out there. Recent local data is all trending down. I just checked this morning on the county site, and the test positivity rate is down to 5.4% in El Dorado County. So of course that's great news, and that'll help us get down to the next tier. And a little bit about vaccines. You know, I think last I reported, we thought we were gonna perhaps get our vaccines at the end of the month or early next month as part of 1C, but it looks like it could be more like 2 or 3 months out. So according to our call with Barton. So that was a little disappointing to hear. And because I thought really expected vaccines would help us get back to normal sooner. So we'll just keep track and see how the vaccines progress. I have a little bit on workforce housing, and I'm planning to set up a committee meeting here later this month. But kind of coming out of our last meeting, which was back in November with Nick and Dwayne, we've been working on the development of a district program process where we can connect customers that have excess sewer units and connect those customers with those affordable housing developers so that those excess units can be donated and then transferred to those affordable housing projects to offset those construction costs. So Shelley, IT and customer service, they've been working on this and making progress. So just a little update today. And one idea to streamline the process is to implement the use of e-signatures through Adobe. And we did bring this up with Gary. So I think at the next board meeting, we plan to bring forward an electronic signature ordinance for your approval. And in terms of these excess sewer units held by, in this case, private customers, we're also looking for a way to make those donations tax deductible. And so in order to do so, they would need to be transferred to a nonprofit entity. I guess transferring that back to the district does not work. We're still looking into that, but we're also working with the Tahoe Prosperity Center to explore this option. I think it needs to be a 501c3. So as I mentioned, I think we'll talk about this in more detail at another Workforce Housing Committee meeting with Nick and Shane later this month. We can talk about the details of this program, and we'd also like to discuss Sugar Pine Village. That's that 248 unit affordable housing project at the Y that's really gaining some momentum. So committee meeting coming up, and we'll be probably bringing that ordinance to the full board at the next meeting. And so my next item is Tahoe Keys Water. And Dave, are you planning to recuse yourself from this item?
Yes, I am. So I'm going to mute, and then I'm going to turn off camera. And
I will text you when when we're finished with the discussion.
Just a couple minutes.
Yep.
Unless there are questions, comments after that. Okay. Looks like we're good to go. So Tahoe Keys, we're continuing to work with Tahoe Keys Water, and of course their water quality challenges at all 3 of their wells. Since my last report here 2 weeks ago, they have since provided us with additional system data on their distribution system, wells, etc., their production numbers, their consumption numbers. And we've also met with them and continue to meet with them to coordinate and prepare for some upcoming field tests. And I think these will occur later this month. The way it looks like, we're trying to, well, we're working with them. We want to exercise our existing intertie with the Tahoe Keys. And then while that intertie is open at various flow levels, flow rates, we want to check our own system at critical points in our distribution systems to see how the pressure fluctuates at various flow rates. So I expect that to begin this month. It might extend into next month. And I think in other news with the Tahoe Keys, I talked a little bit about this last time. They circulated an RFP for engineering services, services to develop a water supply facilities plan, both a long-term plan and an interim emergency plan. And the districts, we're going to join them in the consultant selection process. And actually, Shannon is reviewing those RFPs on our end right now. So I believe they're planning to make that selection in the next 10 days. So they're moving fast there at the Tahoe Keys at this point. And that's really, that's my update on the Tahoe Keys for today. Is there any questions or comments on this item or other items? And so if not, I think we can bring Dave back on.
Okay, I just sent him a text. There we go.
There's Dave. Okay, so now we have a solar project update. And Julie?
Hello, this is Julie. Let's see, Brian, if Denver's out there, can you make sure he's got audio? And can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a little bit of an update for you today. Couple of things before we walk through these spreadsheets, which is an updated financial analysis that we received from ProStar yesterday. Couple other things that are going on. We have had some meetings over the last couple of weeks with Quorum ProStar to review the draft PPA agreement, and they responded to the comments that we had given them last month. And it sounds like we're working through those, and we expect to have an updated PPA agreement addressing our comments in the next week or two. So there will be more to come on that. On the Liberty front, I have a meeting coordinated with Jennifer Gunther, the service rep that we work with, for next Tuesday. And we're going to be talking primarily about the non-bypass or standby charges that they would be expecting for the district to pay for the solar generation. And so that's going to be a topic of interest as we walk through these spreadsheets. So we'll be meeting next week, and before we do that, we're going to be having a conversation with a consultant that we have a relationship with, Jeff Inga. I think I've mentioned him before, and we're going to just make sure we're prepared for that conversation with Jennifer. So things are definitely moving. Denver, are you out there?
I don't see that Denver is on the line right now.
Let's see. He said earlier that he would be here today. I don't see that I received any updates from him. So, okay, well, I guess I'm going to wing it then. So the spreadsheets, which I think we routed to you by PDF, and maybe Kelly has a hard copy as well. It's a packet. There's 4 different primary spreadsheets and then a couple of backup pages. Our intention is to walk you through these 4 primary pages so that you know what you're looking at. Basically, where we're at in the process is we are narrowing our project down to the 1.4 kilowatt DC or 1 kilowatt AC size project. Everything that you're going to see in here is in those DC terms, which is how the solar panels are sized. And this is the smallest of the project sizes that we've been considering all along. It is the project that was requested in the RFP that Optimy and the Seed Fund that Optimy and the Seed Fund included in the RFP. And we I have stuck to that size just from the perspective of this is a small system. It's a first step. All the instantaneous power that it generates would be able to be used on site in the moment. So it doesn't require us to rely on the grid for storage. And our thought with this is that we can move forward, hopefully a little bit more quickly with Liberty and negotiating with Liberty and get this project moving. So I'm going to pause for a second because it looks like, John, you're sending me text messages while I talk.
Yes, just I had a comment. I don't know how, if you want to, we could pause this staff update, and I think we could go to closed session and come back to this if you'd like to look for Denver. So I'm just wanted to throw that out as an idea.
Okay, yeah, why don't we do that, because he is going to be a lot cleaner in his presentation of the material that's on his spreadsheet because he developed it.
Right.
So I'd muddle through, but you'd probably appreciate hearing from him better. Do you want to do that?
Okay, that's what we'll do then.
Hey, Melanie or John, I apologize. I had to restart my computer. Would you guys mind texting me the closed session call-in details?
Sure.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
John, do you want me to handle that or do you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll send it to him.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we will go out of open session into closed session. And I think we're all back. I see Nick. So we are coming out of closed session into open session with nothing to report. And is Julie there?
I am. And I found Denver.
Oh, good.
He had that our meeting was at 4 o'clock, not 2 o'clock. So he should be joining us. Denver, are you out there?
Yes. Oh, hello.
Yay.
Hey guys. I apologize. I got my times mixed up as Miss Julie said. So apologize for that. Apologize for everyone having to wait. And then I was just muted, right? So I appreciate y'all unmuting. If we're okay to start, I can kind of Miss Julie, I'm not sure exactly where you left off with the spreadsheet, or if you just kind of wanted me to start from the beginning and kind of explain everything, so that way we have a base and then we can kind of run through each category, or exactly what would be the best way for everyone.
Well, I was a little bit incomprehensible, I think, when I was talking, because I was trying to figure out where you were at the same time. So I'm not even sure exactly what came out of my mouth. It wouldn't hurt to step back.
Awesome. Well, and again, everyone, I apologize for the time mix up. But what we're
Denver?
looking at here, yes.
So there's a couple new board members. I mean, I jumped on a couple board meetings before I was elected, but could you give us just a brief overview of where we've been and kind of where we are today?
Yes, sir, exactly. So we started back a couple months ago, the end of September. We were engaged with basically our pursuit to be able to submit for the RFP that the seed fund had put out. As a part of that pursuit, there was a bid alternate section of land that could be utilized for solar if it was found viable. So we basically proposed on-site canopy and rooftop there for the wastewater treatment plant, as well as a bid alternative ground mount site across the street there. In kind of due diligence and just working through with everyone there, we've determined that it's not necessarily feasible or economical to do the array actually on the property through those carport canopies and those rooftops. So we look to just concentrate on the ground mount land across the way. And so with looking at that, we've looked at a couple different system sizes that have ranged all the way from 1.4 megawatts that we're looking at here, all the way up to 4.2 megawatts. One of our challenges has been, and I think still some of the questions that we might have that we will hopefully get answered next week, have been with Liberty Utilities and how they're going to handle the production of our solar array. And due to kind of some of the, not misinformation, but I just think different information that we're getting from different people, we haven't been able to necessarily nail down economics of what an overproduction profile would look like. So what we decided would be best and would be our easiest pathway forward would be to design a system that could be instantaneously used by the district there. So meaning that each watt of energy that was produced in real time would be utilized in real time by the wastewater treatment facility. And so that has led us back to this 1.4 megawatt system that's going to produce the 2.3 million annually, almost 2.4 annually in production. And so what we found and what we're going to kind of look at today, depending on Liberty's direction and what they give us with their kind of definition of non-bypassable charges and our ability to negotiate if there is any leverage there, will affect kind of how these things look. And so what we've done with kind of illustrating on the Excel is we've shown two scenarios in which we would be provided a full credit with no bypass charges, and then obviously two scenarios in which those bypass charges exist. I think the ultimate goal for us is to obviously figure out the best way for the district, for everyone to kind of work together with Liberty through kind of this first initial, not necessarily phase, but for this kind of first initial project that we were awarded. And then obviously I know that there are some additional pursuits with looking at maybe islanding the entire load that we've had a lot of positive responses out of so far. At least from our manufacturers and our finance end. So I think that the issues that we're having with Liberty, I think that that's something that we're going to be able to ultimately solve. I just think that what we're talking about today with this 1.4 megawatt is our pathway to least resistance to achieve what the board had initially set out with kind of the goal of the seed fund RFP, and really what all of the seed fund and Optimi had kind of set out with their goal to achieve. So that was kind of the purpose of us, was to be able to knock out and achieve that goal, and then obviously to look at anything additional that could be done to mitigate any of the challenges that we have with Liberty.
Does that help?
Did that give enough detail to kind of a backstory there, or were you looking for an initial segment? Do we need more information on ProStar and core construction to that end, or was it just mainly around the transaction itself?
No, that's good. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure. Awesome. If there aren't any other initial questions, I wanted to kind of dive into the Excel that we're looking at. You're going to see a very common theme here. This obviously matches what we reviewed prior to the holiday in one of our last in-person meetings that we had. But basically just kind of starting with column A, column A1 right there. This is a 1.4 megawatt system with a 2% escalator. One of the tasks that we were given to look at different financial options. So what we're going to be looking at today from a financial option is going to be a 25-year term with a 2% escalation rate and a 25-year term with a 0% escalation rate. The tab right below that shows the size of the system in kilowatts. This is DC sizing. So if we reverse engineered this to AC sizing, which is how Liberty Utilities and the majority of utilities speak, this is that 1 megawatt kind of sweet spot cap that Liberty has illustrated that they would like to see in their territories if their clients would like to move forward with solar. So we're basically also making kind of that concession to fit in the box that they've illustrated for us. The column right below that gives the production of the solar array. This is based, and again, we have production trees that show losses that we've ran through with the independent engineering team that y'all have on board, but more than happy to do the exact same thing or anything else needed to validate those production numbers. Obviously, we're taking into account the snow load. I know initially we had a question of to whether we were utilizing enough of kind of snow load losses. From our side, just to be conservative, we did ramp that up on our end just to make sure that we were equating for all of those things. But those are the major components. Then that we have a year column. So the year column runs year 1 through 30. The reason why we have a 30-year cash flow is that with this solar array also comes a 30-year production guarantee, which basically states that the manufacturer is going to guarantee the production of the solar facility year 1 through year 30. If we miss our production number, so that 2,383,792, if we miss that number by more than a 10% variance, we'll actually true up that difference with the owner of the system. So in this case, obviously year 1 through 25, that would be owned by the financier, but everything year 26 through year 30 would be owned by the district, so it would be a true up. The reason why that exists is obviously just to mitigate the risk for our investors and then ultimately the end user clients that end up with these generation assets. The next row over from that is the usage. So basically what I did here, and it's just flat, but what we did was we took an average over the last 3 years. Miss Julie and team supplied us with numerous data from the utility side, all the way from interval level, all the way to monthly, basically over the past 3 years. We averaged all of that data together to come up with that 6,523,000 in total usage. So I'm saying that to say that that's not exactly what you used last year, but if we average your usage over the last 3 years, that is the mean that we get out of those. Column C is going to be your cost pre-solar installation. So this is currently what you're paying the utility now for that usage. Column D is that PV production. So you're seeing that production number, obviously, that's in A3. The reason why it goes down is that we have a 0.5% degradation rate on our panels. So what that basically means is that our panels are going to produce 0.5% less each year, year over year, degrading. The good news is that even at year 30, that tells us that we still have over 70% life of our system left just with that degradation rate. But that's what that does. That's the reason why that de-escalates. Then what we're doing in column E, as you can see, I've got it titled up there, 40% increase from the utility with no bypass charges. So what we did was we derived that we felt like our avoided cost would be around 8.9 cents. What I'm doing is I'm showing that 8.9 cents in year 1, but I'm also showing a 40% increase in year 2 based off the information that y'all have received from Liberty that we're hearing kind of in the rumblings of what would be coming down the line. Then from there, after that 40% increase, we are escalating the rate of electricity by 3.2%, which is just the national rate of inflation. It's kind of the average that we've had over the last 25 years. So that's the reason why you're seeing that go up. Obviously, as y'all know from dealing with Liberty, it's not always going to be 3.2%. You're going to see significant increases like what you've seen that they've got upcoming right now in that 40% range. It's not always going to be 40 neither, but we just feel like a very good conservative number is that 3.2%. When we look at column F, that is our avoided utility cost. So what we're basically saying there is if we're producing the array from the solar system or from the generation asset, then we're not paying the utility for that same watt of electricity, therefore equals the avoided cost from the utility. Now, this is assuming that there aren't any bypass charges that are able to be avoided as a part of that. Obviously, in some of the other tabs that we're going to look at post this, we're going to talk about a scenario in which Liberty would enforce non-bypassable charges and how those economics would look. From that, in column G, we show what you would pay for that avoided cost of electricity. So as we can see, just kind of simple math, starting, kind of in year 1, you see that you pay 8.1 cents for that watt of electricity, whereas from the utility, you would pay 8.9 cents for that same watt. So what we're basically saying is the delta between those two numbers derives your savings. We have that escalating at a flat 2%, and so that's the reason why you see that go up year over year until year 25. Column H is the PPA payments. That's as simple as the PPA rate times the production of the array equals the PPA payment. So again, this would be the payment that would be made to the financier for the generation of the solar facility itself. You don't have any operations and maintenance cost through this financial vehicle. That falls all on us as the financier. And so we're responsible for not only the production, the insurance, any liability that arises out of the array, also any warranty and our service work that comes with the array. So there's no out-of-pocket cost or no additional cost to the district outside of the PPA rate itself. Column J, I added the remaining Liberty bill. Since this is a scenario to where we still are going to have power that we're pulling from Liberty when the solar array is not producing, then you still will have a bill left with Liberty. And then column K is the annual savings, obviously just the delta between those two. And then I ran a cumulative tab to kind of show cumulative year over year from there. So that's kind of the theme that we're going to see as we move through these tabs. Are there any questions with kind of our method to madness with how we put all of this together on one spreadsheet.
Can you explain the bypass charges concept, please?
Yes, sir. So in normal utility functions, they have a charge that's called a standby charge. That's normally how they refer to it. And the standby charge basically means that we pay the utility an incremental fee to be able to provide us power whether our PV system is producing or not. That's pretty common practice across the way, as we see kind of across the nation. What we're seeing different with Liberty is actually tying bypass charges to generation itself. So what they're telling us is that for each watt of energy that we generate, we still have to pay them a portion of our bill to be able to provide us with power. And so that's kind of our, not necessarily, well, it is a challenge, but that's also kind of our argument from our side, is that if we're producing the power and utilizing it instantaneously, on site there, then how would they have the ability to even, counter for those non-bypassable charges? Because your meter's not spinning in that sense, because you're not using any power from the utility. So that's our major question that we want to get answered on the call that we have upcoming next week with Liberty Utilities, where we're hoping that we'll have everyone on the line that'll be able to answer those questions. In previous pursuits with Liberty, we've been able to get answers, but it hasn't always been the correct person in the right department that has been kind of 100% sure of those answers. But it's in simplicity, though, the bypass charge is just a definition from the utility that they're basically saying that they need to be paid that amount of money to be able to provide you with power when the solar array isn't working.
Yeah, so this analysis you've got on the spreadsheet right now has no bypass charges and no standby charges, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Okay, so it would have to have standby charges at least if they're not going to do bypass charges, right?
So, and those charges would be very standard that we're used to. That's going to be your customer charge, your meter fee, nuclear decommissioning fee, and any type of renewable rider. So those are very insignificant and very small. And the most important thing is that those charges aren't tied to usage. So those are a fixed flat charge that you'll see every single month on the bill, regardless of whether you have solar or not. That's the way that it normally operates in every territory that we've ever operated and are commissioned a system. That's the reason why this has been difficult with Liberty, is that they're actually tying it to the generation itself.
Yeah, I thought it was more of a capacity charge where they've got to provide, they've got to have a power plant somewhere that's adequately sized to fully meet our demand, and sitting there, whether it's operating or not, it's staffed, and so they got to pay for that cost, and they got to pay for the power lines and to get that power to us. And so it's a fair cost to have that, whether you call it a standby fee or a capacity charge. But I guess I don't see that in this spreadsheet.
Yeah,
so that is a part of
spreadsheet
your remaining bill. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Smith.
I was just going to say this spreadsheet is the best case scenario. If we were able to negotiate our way out of having any charges from Liberty for the power that we're now taking from the solar. So this is kind of the one bound of the situation.
Out of curiosity, who governs or regulates the standby charges? I mean, you think that would be regulated by some entity, and so that's, I guess, where I'm going is, if there is an inherent, regulatory authority that reviews that, what unto itself makes Liberty special in comparison with the other examples you cited?
So that is the purpose of the call that we have coming up on the 12th, is to determine that. Normally the guidelines are set by the PUC, and then the actual charges are illustrated by the utility and then approved by the PUC itself. So that is the standard function of the flow of operation. My understanding from my talks that I've had is that they haven't had anyone on an A3 rate schedule utilize behind the meter solar. So this is a new uncharted territory for them. to my knowledge, with what I've been given from the people that I've spoke with at Liberty, that our team has spoke with at Liberty, which obviously opens the door for us to be able to negotiate and create the, our own favorable program, that we can from our side. But again, that's the point of the call, or the purpose of the call on the 12th, is to get the exact definition of those charges, determine exactly how those are derived, and if there is any leverage from our side to be able to mitigate any of those charges.
And we have posed that question to the consultant that we're working with just earlier today, actually. And so we'll be meeting on Monday to see if he can shed any light on exactly that question of how do the bypass charges get set? How do they get reviewed? What's included in those charges? And so hopefully we'll have some more answers for you next time.
Well, I guess what's interesting is that, if you were to ask Paul, and we have asked Paul in the past, what are our fixed rate, if you will, we were able to give that relatively quickly, and kind of the methodology and rationale behind it. So that not being readily available is curious, just at the onset.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. So I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just have a quick question for Julie, related to her conversations with Jeff Inge, specifically with the 40% increase that's assumed in year 2 of the utility cost column. I think it would be worth having a conversation with them to determine if that assumption is accurate. And the reason I say that is, from what I understood, a large portion of that 40% increase is due to delayed implementation of a previous rate increase, as well as making up for losses due to projections being higher than actual sales. And they're trying to make up for those two big pots in 1 or 2 years. And then that portion of the increase is supposed to fall off, from what I understand. And so you'd actually see a decline in maybe year 4. A portion of that 40% should decline. At least that's how I understood it when he was talking about it.
I was not aware that it might drop off. A big question in my mind was, how likely are they to get that 40% increase? Since we're obviously fighting against it. So
I think we should talk to him about that, and I'd be happy to send him out an email, because if that's true, that's going to have quite an impact on this, at the 30-year level, especially because this 40% jump is right off the bat at year 1, and so all the future increases after that are compounded by that additional 3.2, and so that it could create a big difference.
Yeah, and so for this one, since we're trying to kind of show the best case scenario, having that 40% rate increase come in year 2 and be sustained throughout the 30 years really is the best case scenario for the financial analysis. When we get to the other spreadsheet where we also include the bypass charges, then it's like, well, we might be a little unconservative by assuming, because that's supposed to be the other end of the spectrum. It would be maybe more reflective of a worst case scenario if we said, no, that 40% is either not going to happen at all, or it's going to drop off after year 5 or whatever.
Okay. By drop off, you mean just the rate of increase drop off? Is this
correct?
Okay. And this is what Liberty's telling you?
No, this is what the consultant that we use that does the analysis of Liberty's rate increases.
I'd be curious, when you get that analysis, I'd be curious to look at that as well, and to see what variables and assumptions are derived within it. Because I think I would just like to see the analysis. Thank you.
Okay.
Will
And-
your consultant be on the call with Liberty and you guys? Is Jeff going to be on the call with you as well?
Right now, the call that I have scheduled for the 9th is just me and Jennifer. Denver, you've been referring to a call on the 12th?
Yeah, I think I misspoke. I was referring to your call. So
My
I think
call?
I misspoke, and if that's on the 9th, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So, originally the intention of the call on the 9th was a check-in, and she was planning on providing me with some numbers, basically the basis for the bypass charges we've included in this analysis. I got impatient and reached out to her yesterday and asked for it beforehand. And so now I've got, a little bit of information explaining their position and basically what they are expecting. And so we'll talk about that with our consultant and then kind of strategize what our discussions with Liberty the next day should be. Do we want to go on to the other?
Yeah, I was gonna
scenarios?
say, if everyone's got kind of a good understanding of the flow, I think it might be beneficial just to hop to 1.42% with bypass. So that way we can just kind of look at, comparable, and then obviously we can dive into the 0% escalator, but just to be able to show kind of everyone the effect of what we are seeing with the bypass charges and how those, obviously are significant with what we're looking at here.
Right.
Denver, just to be clear, there's a bypass charge and there's a standby charge. Those are two different independent charges that come on with the solar pump.
No, sir. So all I was saying was that my fault for any confusion. I was just saying that what Liberty is referring to as bypass charges are normally known as a standby charge.
Okay.
I believe it was exactly, I don't know if it was Mr. Hughes or who it was, because how it pops up on my phone, but exactly the way that it was explained, as far as basically being able to deliver the power no matter what at any, having the infrastructure and all of those things. They're just normally associated. Normally bypass charges are the standby charges. So it's just Liberty is referring to it in a different vernacular than what we've heard.
Thanks for clarifying.
Sure.
So just before I change slides here, the column L, cumulative savings on this version, kind of the best case scenario, paints a pretty picture with respect to cost savings with this project. So as I flip over, you'll see a very different picture if we have the bypass charges included.
Correct. And so what's happened here is that obviously all of the rows and columns are exactly the same as explained before. The main difference is going to be column F. So what we're assuming based off of the knowledge that we have and the knowledge that Ms. Julie has from her side based on the conversation is that we're only going to be able to avoid 60% of the total avoided costs from the utility, because the other 40% is going to be made up of those standby charges. And obviously you can see the effect. So in a sense, we're basically losing, almost 80 grand a year to these non-bypassable charges as a part of it. Not that they have the motivation to, but the correlation of these two spreadsheets also kind of help with being able to paint the picture to Liberty of why we would want to look for some type of concession of these charges if they do exist in this capacity. Again, I just think that they're kind of learning along as we go, just because they haven't had many, if any, renewable generation facilities connected behind the meter on an A3 rate schedule.
So, question for you. In column C there, is that really our total bill, 580,000, or is that just the the energy portion of it.
That is just your base energy portion. Now that's configured off of a blended rate of basically blending in your supply plus your delivery. But Miss Julie, don't let me get too far ahead of my skis here. I don't believe that 8.9 cents includes any type of customer charge or any type of surcharges or anything else. In that, I could be mistaken with that statement. But just want to make sure.
That I think you're right. That the 8.9 cents that's in column E is the average expected cost per kilowatt hour, so the consumptive piece of the tariff for next year. And so that is just a portion of our overall bill.
So Denver, so if I understand you correctly, Liberty is to some degree kind of creating this cost structure for us because it's brand new, because of our classification.
Yes, sir. That's well, it's because they don't have any other program in place. So
right.
While we're fitting in their standard net metering box, we're also being told that net metering isn't offered for an A3 tariff schedule, just because they haven't had anyone in their territory on an A3 schedule move forward with a renewable generation facility, which obviously helps us with our argument. But go ahead. Sorry.
Right. I guess what I was going with this argument is to some degree, without the kind of it being defined today, as you said earlier, it seems that there's room for negotiation. And given our unique circumstances, water utility district, the benefit of fire safety, we won't reiterate all those points again. But I guess, why aren't we more in a driving the bus scenario as to what we believe the tariff should be? Why we're waiting for someone that has, been somewhat reluctant to give us the answers when we wanted them, how we wanted them. Why we're waiting on them to provide this answer in an unknown is just, if it was me running a project, I would counsel differently.
Completely understood. I think that the at least idea and mindset from possibly our side, from development and technical analysis support, is that there might possibly be a strategy or direction for islanding the entire grid, creating a microgrid for the entire load, in which Liberty wouldn't be a part of that equation. So obviously, if we look at those types of scenarios, then everything that we're discussing here is, in transparency, kind of a moot point, because we wouldn't be giving them that power to even classify bypass charges for. So I think that kind of that equated in the thought process. But I assure you that the negotiation and our leverage with Liberty hasn't. That's not going to persist from our side. The fight has just begun, if that, for lack of a better term, from that end. It's just, for us, we're looking for, because the main thing that Liberty is going to tell us before they engage in any type of negotiation for the tariff or any type of bypass charges, is they're going to tell us that we have to fill out our interconnection application as well as our Rule 21 classification. So from the ProStar Core side, we were mainly looking for direction from the board on a system size and economic package that we could push forward with to be able to fill out those applications to start that negotiation and leverage process, if that makes sense.
It does. I guess, so if we were, how would we go from where we are now to the island scenario that you referenced earlier?
So that would be a combination of utilizing more of the land for a larger array that we kind of talked about previously, in combination with the existing gen sets and adding battery storage to work all in conjunction in one.
Well, I guess where my question was, when you see a fixed rate like that, what does that do for the economics surrounding battery storage? It seems like it would make them much more appealing.
It does, yes, sir. 100%. Yes, sir. In this pursuit, it was our goal to accomplish exactly what the seed RFP had put out for us to accomplish, which was this 1.4 interconnected behind the meter type of system. So it was our goal to knock out this bogey first, kind of understanding that there might be a larger play for an islanding microgrid scenario in the very, very near future.
And this project could be a part of that future microgrid.
It exactly should be, yes. Yes, sir.
This would be a piece of that bigger
Correct.
project, right? It would get tied in.
This would be 1.4 of the 4.2 that would need to exist in order to produce enough power to island the entire load. Correct.
So, you know, size-wise, this project is much less risky of an entry into the solar arena, but it comes at a financial cost because you don't have as great of an economy of scale as you would with a larger project that's a bigger commitment. We haven't seen the financial picture yet for that larger array with the microgrid configuration. But that's kind of like the general sense is that your cost per kilowatt hour should go down. Am I correct in that, Dennis?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, you are. I mean, we even seen it in kind of some of the early analysis that we were looking at with just the direct offset net excess generation type of path that we were taking of being able to take advantage of those economies of scale.
Denver, who would own the RECs on this?
So that's the district. So as a part of the RFP, you guys own all of the renewable energy credits.
Do we have a notion of how many we would be generating as part of that?
It depends on obviously our final system size. Obviously, SRX defined, you know, by a megawatt of electricity produced. So we can see that obviously we're producing 2.3 million under this scenario. So that would kind of be our base calculation for that.
Thanks. And is that part of your calculus here? I mean, is that something, I mean, if the district were interested in maybe selling those?
But correct. So that is not factored in. So you have the opportunity, you can hold on to those or you can monetize those. And that would be obviously an additional benefit.
And then do you know what the current day price for a REC is?
I believe that it's $20. It might be a tick less than that right now. I know that it's not very lucrative. You know, you kind of put it in comparison. New Jersey's is $2.32 this morning, and Washington D.C.'s was $4.50 when I checked it the day before yesterday. So obviously, in comparison, it's not that great, you know, from a market comparison. But again, it's an additional revenue component that is not realized here, just because we're giving up ownership of those RECs, so we can't necessarily forecast and tell you where the market would be when you do decide to sell those, if you decided to.
So that's just something for our back pocket, basically.
Correct.
A big back pocket, potentially.
Definitely.
So, you know, at the staff level, the sea of red on the right-hand side of the spreadsheet is obviously not painting a great picture, but I'm interested to hear, you know, thoughts from the board about, you know, project viability, kind of given this wide range of places that we could end up financially with respect to these power costs. Anybody have any feedback for us on that?
I think at some level it's hard to say with just the spread is so big. I guess what I would love to see on a parallel track is the island financing as well. Again, if you're paying 40% or whatever it is, just to the standby charge, I'd be curious as to see what we could do to couple this with battery storage. But I would just, I guess, wait to see what the conversation with Liberty is, meets kind of the tariff discussion kind of going forward, because without that, it's kind of it's a lot to know or not to know.
Yeah, I guess the way I'm looking at this is, maybe this is like phase one, and just somehow playing it out or planning it out and understanding kind of like if we were to phase this, this program out into 3 phases or something, just get a kind of overall sense of how it all play out in terms of the finances part of it. Seems like it's the first step, really.
See, Nick, the battery storage thing is, we're looking at these things as annual numbers, and just an example of this last week, we've had snowpack on the roof for a good solid week. I went by a facility down in the Gardnerville area called, what is it? China Springs Youth Facility. They've got a big solar array down there. The thing was completely crusted with snow. And so anyway, that, I guess long and short of it is, I don't think a battery storage system kind of carries you through the night, but it doesn't carry you through the week. So I'm not sure that that's a viable concept, but I guess that's for the technical people to work out.
I was going to say in our research so far, it is viable for us to be able to again, it's working in conjunction of the generation of the array, the existing gen sets that are in place, and that battery storage system. But all signs that we're seeing so far from the economic and financing side and capacity side, we have the ability to do that.
You could
out of curiosity,
run batteries for a week, 1.4 megawatts?
Not on 1.4 megawatts, no, sir. But on 4.6 with the existing genset and the battery storage component, we could.
Oh, so you'd run the diesel generator that kind of defeats the purpose of the climate
I don't think it's the thing.
project here.
Well, what I'm saying is that they can all work in conjunction with each other, so that way the investment by the district in the gensets is not fully lost. There still is ample return on that as you move forward into the future. So it's basically just having the ability now to incorporate older technology with the newer technology. So again, it's just meant to be, we can have a scenario to where the existing gensets are not utilized at all. I just wanted to create a pathway to where the investment that was already made could be realized in a function for the district moving forward. Additionally, from a snow load capacity standpoint, obviously we understand that that is a challenge and is a factor. As a part of our design process, with not only the height of our array, but also the tilt angle, we're not going to have any problem with our snow shed as a part of it. And then with our black on black that we're utilizing for our panel system, it's actually going to be a more benefit to us when snow is on the ground, because we're utilizing bifacial panels as a part of it, which means that obviously you have the standard panels that you see that have it on the front side, but also there's an additional array on the back, and the albedo from the snowfall is actually greater than what we see from a standard white TPO roof or a white gravel type of scenario, to where yields the best results for those types of ground mounted systems.
Denver, is there any kind of snow clearing actually included in your maintenance estimates?
Yes, sir. Oh, yeah, that's all covered as a part of all of that. So the standard cleaning, any of that is all covered under the operations and maintenance. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Denver, can you repeat what you were saying about the how how the diesel generators are incorporated into your microgrid concept? Because that was unfamiliar to me.
Yes, ma'am. So we have a busing system available now that can interconnect all of our technologies together. So we're able to interconnect the PV production from the array with storage components and a battery system with an existing diesel genset, and we can, our natural gas genset, anything that's tier 3 or better or newer from that side. And then basically we have the element of control. So we would have the ability to control what is utilizing power when and how those functions go. So from a purely economic, I understand the kind of sustainability and environmental benefits, but from a purely economic standpoint, you could basically schedule your days to run the most cost effective. And normally we have found that the most cost effective kind of range with that is the combination of the battery storage, the existing genset, and the PV production.
So the
and
battery
again, that's
size
just a technology.
The battery sizing you're looking at relies on the genset or no?
No, ma'am, it does not. It can just work in conjunction. That's what I'm saying. This can operate completely independent of that existing genset system. I just wanted to be able to, in our goal from technical analysis and discovery, we wanted to be able to provide an option to where that investment that was already made on behalf of the district could still be utilized. It just wasn't a sunk cost in those generators sitting out there not having any use. We could interconnect them with the system, and they could ultimately be the last line of defense if, heaven forbid, anything did happen from that side.
Okay.
I mean, from a function of redundancy, that seems like a great option.
Correct. One more kind of key point on kind of talking about the larger system, larger microgrid. Our finance partners that are currently working on the finance vehicle that's utilized here, that we're seeing just kind of the standard PPA, they have agreed to basically do these microgrid type of transactions under the exact same document. So the current document right now that we're going through legal review, and we actually have I think that's where I got my 12th from, is that we have a legal call for review. Should be hopefully one of the final reviews that we have on our PPA doc. That is the same type of documentation and the exact same vehicle that would be used for the delivery method of the microgrid transaction. And that's just meant to be more palatable, but to everyone to help make that easy.
Hey, Denver, I was wondering about a schedule. Like, at what point do you think the board could take a look at microgrid scenario economics?
I feel very confident that our next meeting, is that on the 18th? Is that correct, or am I shooting out too far there?
That's correct.
Is that correct? I feel very confident by the 18th, we would be able to run through any and all of those scenarios. We also should have very clear feedback from Liberty on these bypass charges. So we would be able to show, obviously, this scenario with the true numbers, not just kind of estimated at that 60%.
Great.
Hey, Denver. Sorry, one last question. As we've discussed at previous meetings, the districts entered into the Department of Energy grant opportunity in conjunction with the city, the county, the school district, the community college, and others, all looking to establish their own microgrid systems in South Lake. And so I think it's also important to note that we're not operating here kind of on an island, if you will. And that would there be any kind of interconnectivity between those various different microgrids to kind of further provide additional redundancy to our energy system?
100%. So that's kind of the goal with that white paper that y'all guys have put together as a part of it. I think that just kind of, if we look at logistically wise, the community college is obviously something that would be able to directly benefit from this kind of idea, and then any other within reach off takers. I think one of the challenges that we'll have to face if we look for off-site or type of virtual type of PPA scenarios is obviously we're going to have to utilize Liberty's infrastructure to be able to make those things possible when we don't have people that are within the arm's reach. So that would take, you know, a little bit of due diligence and pursuance on that side. But yes, sir, that is the goal.
Is there a Denver? I guess you mentioned some technical specifications, or at least you described a system that can be used in snow. You talked about, you know, the angle and enthalpy and all these other things. And so my question to you is there a system like that in snow country similar to this, that our operators could talk with their operators to kind of validate what you're saying?
Mammoth has one.
Oh, I was going to say there's our engineering team has done some work in the Truckee area for some smaller systems that have dealt with this type of snow load. Now, from a bifacial panel specification, no, sir, I don't. That's a newer technology that we're utilizing that allows us to use basically an underutilized back sheet of a panel to generate power. So I can get you some nationwide studies on how the different reflectivity or albedo affects those things and how snow kind of equates on that range as compared to, you know, either grass or sand or those different things. So it would be done. The answer is yes, but it would be done in a combination of two forms of data set. One would come from our engineering team and what they've done with dealing with snow load up in the Truckee area. And then the second would be basically that white paper case study for our bifacial panels and how those are utilized reflectivity to create production.
And as an aside, when we first started talking with the solar consultant out of Nebraska, that was her first recommendation. It was like, you want to get those production numbers up, you know, they should be using bifacial panels. And then lo and behold, Denver came back and said, we're going to use bifacial panels. So that was a good sign that we're kind of all on the same page about how to optimize that production in the winter.
That sounds like it's an idea in the box, and we can't really point to facilities that are using that and actually call somebody on the phone and say, hey, is it really working the way they said?
Yeah, I can ask our Nebraska consultant, because, you know, this is HDR, and she's their renewable energies corporate lead. You know, who have you guys worked with? You know, give us some phone numbers that we can call.
And per our agreement with Core and ProStar, essentially they'd be responsible for the efficacy of the system during the 25-year contract period, correct?
Exactly. And our manufacturer is responsible for the entire 30. And that's tied directly to production. So I mean, that's what I'm saying from our side. Once engineering's complete, we outline that production from year 1 all the way through year 30. And it's done on an annual true up. So I mean, we have full reporting and transparency, not only back to the district, but also to our finance partner and the utility, as long as one is involved. So those, I mean, and we can have, in some cases, we do biannual reviews. In some, we do quarterly reviews, just to kind of show tracking progress. But that would definitely be something as a part of our deliverable that we would come back to the district each and every year, or whatever time frame that sets up best for everyone. And we'd say, hey, this is what we said that we were going to produce in this year. This is what it shows that we actually produced. Either we owe a settlement or we don't from that. But yes, all that liability would fall on ProStar Core.
Well, that, I guess, that makes sense to me when you're fully connected to Liberty, and they're the backup. They're the source of power if this thing doesn't work. But when you start talking about microgrids, now all of a sudden we are taking on the risk, whether we're taking on the, you know, the immediate financial risk. We're taking on the risk of non-performance of this thing. You know, we got a plant to run, and if there's no juice, what are we going to do? So I guess if the backup for us is to run our diesel generator 24/7. That doesn't sound that good to me. And it certainly isn't, a big motivator for all this is reduction in greenhouse gases. And if running the diesel gen set is part of the equation, I don't think we're getting there. So
I think we're overestimating the days in which this scenario could ever play out. I mean, we could look at a lot of different data sets about snow loads in Tahoe. I could tell you a lot of different examples in Tahoe, in Truckee specifically. The Tahoe Truckee, there's some systems there have been running for 100% renewable for years. And so I think, whereas I agree we have to be very conscious of these things, we also have to be conscious of the frequency, the interconnectivity and kind of the larger system that we're looking to create. And so it's not that I agree with your point completely, but I think we also need to be the instances in which we would be running the diesel generator 24 hours a day, if we play these scenarios over the last decade, would be very, very few.
Seems like even with a microgrid, you'd still have the opportunity to pull in Liberty utility power if needed, still be tied.
You 100% can do that, and that would be the plan for us for additional backup for that end. We would just be on the front side of we'd be on the other end of their service. So that's the main difference. With the scenario that we're looking at here in an interconnection with no type of storage facility, we're interconnecting behind your meter, but we're interconnecting into their service. In a microgrid scenario, we would be building the microgrid and all of the storage components actually in front of their service point. So that way no energy would hit that service point unless all of those systems prior to that had failed. And additionally, we do not have to include the diesel genset in any part of the microgrid discussion. All I'm saying is that we have a technology now that exists that didn't exist prior that allows us to incorporate that technology into this function just to add additional resiliency and additional control. It does not have to be a part of what we're doing here.
So in that scenario, we would have, if we included the diesel generator, we'd have one level of redundancy in the diesel generator. And then if that failed as well, we would have an interconnection with Liberty. And it's, I mean, to some degree, the same level of thinking with our interties with the Keys and Lucan.
Correct. Yeah. So the Liberty service is always going to exist there. There's no reason for us, unless we look at, some type of obviously acquisition in which we were going to utilize their infrastructure to be able to supply other entities with our power that we're producing there on site. Liberty is always going to exist in that service there. So yes, that would always be available.
So I think Dave's point about the concerns over providing reliable power to the wastewater treatment plant are absolutely a concern as we're looking at this concept. And from my perspective, that's why going with this 1.4 megawatt system first, as the first project that we build makes a lot of sense, because then we'll get some experience. We'll see how things actually perform, what we can actually expect as far as wintertime production, and that would help them hone in on the microgrid concept for the future.
That's an interesting idea. So if we let's say we wanted to, if our goal, let's say, the worst case scenario numbers are what comes to be, the numbers, but our end all goal would be, say, the island microgrid, is what you're saying, that go forward with the 1 meg system, see how that performs.
Mm-hmm.
If for some reason it doesn't meet expectation, or we still have concern about redundancy that Commissioner Peters or raised, those type of things, then we would still be, saving the 1.8, although there'd be the savings initially. Is that kind of what you were thinking?
Say that last sentence again.
Well, I was going to say, we still save in the end like 1.8 million, although we lose initially, but was that kind of the way you were looking at kind of phasing this, if you will?
Yeah, so that's part of the reason for my earlier question about, like, how does everybody feel about the numbers on this screen? Because you do, at the end of the life of the panels, you do end up having saved $2 million, which are in the red for, the majority of the PPA under this scenario. But it's kind of like it's the cost of getting into a new technology and becoming comfortable with it before you buy into this larger project that has very big consequences if it goes sideways, right? Even though the benefits might also be huge.
In this scenario, would we be able to connect the electricity directly to the plant?
Yes, right? It's behind the meter. Yeah.
Correct.
Because I think that's significant as well. As we look, as we were referencing earlier, the current concern we had initially when we had talked about this was that we wouldn't be able to utilize the power generated by the solar directly at the plant. But if, allowing to have another form of redundancy plus the, approximately $2 million saved at the end does provide a lot of benefit. Plus if the payoff does work, the island, if everything checks out, like you said, the payoff could be really significant on the back end.
Yeah, and this is sized so that we would be able to use every kilowatt produced instantaneously at the plant. It should never hit the grid, and I think that will be part of our argument with Liberty when we talk about these generation fees that they want to put on us. I think they're picturing that our system will be used for storage, and so that they want to get something for that. But this system will not be relying on the grid for storage. We're going to use it immediately.
Exactly.
So don't get me wrong. We will fight our darndest to get the bypass charges down, but we haven't had to do, we haven't had this fight before. And so, we're calling in the experts to help us out, but we're just not there yet.
Sounds like we'll have hopefully a lot more information to bring back in 2 weeks.
Yeah, we will work towards that.
Okay. Well, thank you for the update and the explanation. Is there anything else? Anybody have any other questions or concerns?
All good?
Good to go? Okay, you've got your past and future meetings, and I think we can adjourn this meeting. Each other in a couple of weeks. Thank you, everybody.